The feast was almost ready to begin, just the procession of the king and queen to come to get things started. John was sat beside some of the sons and daughters of the more important lords. There had almost been a fight between Jamie and Kevin when it was decided, but Jamie refused to back down. If John couldn't sit at the high table, he'd sit in an equally important place, and that was it. If the Tyrells weren't sat at the high table, John knew Jamie would have insisted he sat there, and John couldn't help but admire Jamie for it. He looked around the table. The two Tyrell boys and their sister were sat opposite him. Lancel and the Red Wine boys sat at the end of the table, which John was glad of, none of them being his favorite people. The two Royce boys sat together talking to two lads from the Stormlands that John didn't know the names of. There were a group of girls from the Riverlands who'd almost been put as far away from John as possible at the Tully's request, and he sighed. Obviously, it wasn't just Catelyn who hated him. The doors opened and the procession began. The king and queen at the front, both looking like they'd prefer to be elsewhere. Jamie accompanying Lady Olenna, followed by Lord Mace and his wife. Lord Arryn walked alone slowly behind them, while Tyrion walked with an uncomfortable, very beautiful blonde woman. A Hightower, he thought, followed by Geryon and his sister Jenna, and lastly by Kevin and his wife, Lady Dorna. They made their way to the high table and took their seats, allowing all of those present to do the same. Finally, I thought they'd take forever, Garland said with a smile. Grandmother looks happy. The younger Tyrell, Loras said. Well, as happy as she ever is, he added before his sister gave him an admonishing glare. Lord Jamie was very gallant in accompanying her. Don't you think so, John? Marjorie said, a lopsided smile on her face. John almost gulped when he realized he was being spoken to. He looked to Marjorie and could see the amusement in her eyes, although he noticed it wasn't the mean or spiteful sort of amusement. Aye, Lord Jamie is very gallant, Lady Marjorie. Just Marjorie. The smile even warmer now. Of course, just Marjorie, John replied before they both broke out in laughter. Garland and Loras looked on in confusion as the two of them continued to laugh before Marjorie turned to them. A private joke, Marge? Garland asked. Not private. When we met John, I called him Lord John. He insisted he was just John. Although later when I met him again, his young lady insisted he had a different name, she said, and looked at John with her eyebrow raised. Yon, John said, causing both of them to laugh once again. Both Garland and Loras turned to each other and then back to their sister and Lord Jamie's page, neither understanding what the other found so funny. So, where is young Joy tonight? Did she not accompany you? Marjorie asked, getting her laughter under control. No, my lady, it's way past her bedtime, and once she's heard her story, she's out like a light. Are you the storyteller, then? Garland interjected a small smirk on his face. Aye, my lord, John said sheepishly as he glanced at the still smiling Marjorie. What did you think of the melee, John? Loras asked. It was good, my lord, made me eager for the duels. John, he's Loras, my brother's Garland, and I'm Marjorie. If we can call you by your name, then you should do the same. It wouldn't be proper, my lady, John replied. It would if we wished it, John, she said determinedly. You better listen to her, John. When my sister makes her mind up, it's better to just go along with her, Garland quickly added. Especially when I'm right, Marjorie said softly, hitting her brother on the shoulder. John sat there with a smile on his face. He looked to the end of the table where Lancel and the horrible twins were shooting daggers at him before he looked back to Marjorie and her brothers. Loras and Garland were both talking excitedly to each other, but she was looking at him, that lopsided grin on her face, and his smile immediately grew larger. Jamie. Jamie sat at the high table beside Lady Olenna, the king sitting to his right, already beginning to get drunk while his sister sat there fuming. Lord Mace and Lord Arryn were in intense discussion, much to the chagrin of Lady Olenna by his side, and it would have made Jamie smile if his attention wasn't captured by the events at John's table. He looked down to see John in rapt attention while Lady Marjorie spoke to him, his young charge hanging on every word, and it reminded him of himself when he was younger and how Cersei could make the room disappear when she spoke to him. He smiled and turned to the lady beside him, deciding to have some fun. Your granddaughter seems to be enjoying herself, Lady Olenna. Was it your idea to place a bastard at my granddaughter's table, Lord Jamie? The women scowled at him. John is an honorable lad, my lady. As my page, my duty is to place him in a position worthy of him. he said, annoyance clear in his voice. "And a table with his betters is worthy of him." "John has no betters, my lady. You think very highly of the boy, Lord Jamie." "I do, my lady. John is a remarkable young man." "In spite of his birth?" she asked leadingly. "No, my lady, because of it," Jamie said, noticing the surprised look the woman gave him. Jamie decided to change the subject before he said more than he wanted to. He needed to get the woman's focus on something else. "I wish to discuss some matters with you, my lady, when you have the time." "Oh, and what matters are those, my lord? Relations between the Reach and the West have never been, how shall I put it, cordial." "Indeed. Lord Jamie, they haven't. Your father always felt, what was he said? Oh yes, that we reached afar." "My father was a man often blind to his own faults." "And you, my lord," Olenna said mockingly. "Oh me, I'm well aware of my faults, my lady." The two of them looked intently at each other, Olenna's look moving from suspicion to intrigued before finally settling on curiosity. Good Jamie thought curiosity was a good thing, as long as it was directed at him and not John. Barristan. Barristan! Sir Barristan watched the room for threats, but every so often his eyes were drawn to the dark-haired young boy at the lower table. The boy was eagerly engaged in conversations with the Tyrell children, both boys seemingly peppering the boy for information regarding the duels, while the young lady asking questions about Joy, which Barristan found odd. What would a young boy know about Joy? When he saw him earlier, his attention had been drawn to the boy, his frowns, his curious looks, his eyes, and that smile. Something about that smile had made his heart almost stop. Whatever it was, he couldn't quite place it. But there was something familiar about it. As he watched the boy, he again felt like he knew him, like he should know him. It was like something on the edge of his mind, and Barristan was annoyed with himself that he couldn't place it. "Of course, Lord. Hand. Anyway, my family can help. We'll gladly do so." Barristan heard Lord Tyrell's voice, and it grated on him. "I thank you, Lord Tyrell. The Crown will of course be very grateful." Drunk again, groping the serving girls while his wife sat there disgusted. This was not a man worth serving, not like his prince would have been. A man worth serving. Was he doomed never to find one? Jorah. Jorah sat beside Sir Wireless. He had done well today, both had, but the drunk priest was crazy, he thought as he looked at the man. Thoros had been unstoppable. The Hound had found out to his cost, and Jorah was glad he hadn't faced the fiery blade himself. He turned to look at the high table. There she was, the most beautiful woman Jorah had ever seen, his breath caught in his throat. Was she looking at him? Surely not. He nodded to her all the same, and when she smiled, his heart felt like it would burst from his chest. "Isn't that right, Sir Jorah?" The jovial tone of Wireless interrupted his gazing. "Sorry, Wile. What was that?" "I was saying that today's fight was one for the tales. 2 Northmen evenly matched fighting for an hour or more." "Aye, Sir Wireless, it was. You fought like a true warrior, and I was lucky to take the day." He raised his tankard and crashed it against the other man's. "The North remembers," he said loudly. "Aye, the North remembers," Sir Wireless replied before they both laughed loudly. Tyrion sat at the table, his head pounding and his uncle being his usual annoying self. All right, Sir Gerion wasn't actually annoying, but by the 7 did the man truly ratchet things up when people were hungover. Gerion never seemed to suffer the morning after sickness, not due to lack of drinking. Tyrion knew, and if his uncle had a secret, well then he kept it to himself. "Cheer up, Tyrion. Here, drink this," Gerion said, handing him a small cup. "What is it?" "Trust me, nephew." Tyrion just nodded and emptied the cup. It took only a minute or so before he felt his stomach begin to churn. He looked to his smiling uncle as if to say, "Why me?" before he quickly jumped up and ran for the privy, passing Jon on his way out of the door, the look of surprise on the boy's face almost enough to make him laugh. Running as quick as his stunted legs would carry him, he made it just in time, opening the door. His stomach emptied as he got inside. Within a moment or two he was fine. His stomach stopped churning and he felt somewhat better. He left the privy and headed back to the hall, each step making him feel more like himself. By the time he reached the table and drank a cup of water, his sickness and headache had passed. "What was in that cup, Uncle?" "Just a remedy I picked up." Geryon said, his ever-present smirk on his face. We should market it, uncle. It'd make us rich. Geryon, we are rich, his uncle said, nudging John. Well, richer then. Uncle Geryon's morning elixir. John looked on in amusement as Tyrion tried to convince Geryon to either give him the recipe or to make some more. He broke his fast on the small oatcake and placed one in his pack for later. After they broke their fast, he and Tyrion would be riding to Lannisport for a meeting with Sir Wylis, and John was nervous. Setting up the meeting was easy, but actually helping Tyrion negotiate was not something he looked forward to. Jaime was putting a lot of faith in him, and the thoughts of letting him down worried him. He looked to see Tyrion was waiting for him and quickly finished so they could get on their way. The meeting needed to be done early so Sir Wylis could prepare for the joust, and John was upset it would take his time away from Joy. Will you be bringing Joy to the joust, Geryon? He asked the older man. I'm afraid not, John. The noise may be too much for her, and I worry if she saw a horse get hurt. Of course, I'll try and pop in and see her before the joust then. Thanks, lad. I'll let her know. No doubt she'll ask for you when I go see her. John nodded as he and Tyrion left. They quickly made their way to their horses, and despite Tyrion preferring to ride slowly, they instead rode quite hard to Lannisport. Once they reached the town, Aliers and Jaws handed off the horses, and they made their way to the tavern to meet Sir Wylis. They found the man sitting alone for once, his guards lounging against the wall. Ah, Lord Tyrion, John, it's good to see you came so early. I worried you'd be late. Of course not good. Sir, we wouldn't dream of it, Tyrion said, taking his seat. So what can I do for you both? My brother sent me to discuss a trading arrangement with you, Sir Wylis. Trading, Lord Tyrion, I'm not aware we have such an arrangement, the man said, confused. Indeed not, Sir Wylis, but I think that Lord Jaime and Lord Tyrion would like to rectify that situation, John added quickly. So what items would you like to trade? Wood and ships, my lord, as well as discuss mutually beneficial trading routes, Tyrion said before John handed him a couple of pieces of paper. We have ore and minerals, good craftsmanship and weapon making, and our own trading centers to help develop trade further, Tyrion added as he looked over the papers. The two men spoke for over an hour with no agreement even close to being entertained, let alone agreed to. Sir Wylis seemed distrustful of the Lannister motives, and Tyrion was on the verge of blowing up every time the man questioned them. Sir Wylis, I don't know what else I can say to you, Tyrion said, the exasperation clear in his voice. Aye, my lord, not sure what there is to say. You two are behaving like idiots, John said, stunning the two men. Careful, Snow. You may be my liege lord's son, but that doesn't give you the right. The right to what good? Sir, point out idiocy when it's clearly being shown in front of me, John said angrily. Lord Tyrion and Lord Jaime are offering you something that your father and yourself would jump at normally. This deal allows for your family to make a great profit. It's larger than almost any deal you have at present, am I right? Aye, Snow. That's true, but a deal with the Lannisters is not one my father would go for, Wylis said, noticing the angry look Tyrion shot him. And why is that, sir? John asked, placing his hand on Tyrion's arm and shaking his head. How can we trust them? Snow, you know what the North thinks of them. Sir Wylis, what does the Reach think of your family? John said, catching the man off guard. When you came north, what did the North think of them? John quickly added. But my father always said Lord Wyman is the smartest man in the North, and his lealness is unquestioned, John said, noticing the look of pride in Wylis's face. Aye, he is that, John, but what has that got to do with this? Sir Wylis, you family was once unwelcome in the Reach and suspected in the North, but the word of the Starks was good enough for that to be forgotten, and now you're treated with the respect your family is due. No one dare says a Manderly is not to be respected lest my father hear of it. Aye. Wylis said, his chest puffed out. I may not carry my family's name, Sir Wylis, but the blood of the Starks runs through these veins. Is that not so? It is, John. Let there be no doubt of that, Wylis said with a nod of his head. The Lannisters have treated me with nothing but care and respect. My father trusted Lord Jaime, as do I. He is not his father. Sir, he is a different man, a better man, and knowing that, and then turning down this deal is not what I'd expect from Lord Wyman's heir. You shame me, John, Wireless said with a look of embarrassment. Not my intention, Sir Wireless. I just wanted you to know that like the Manderleys when they came north, the Lannisters are worthy of a second chance also. Very well. I shall take this to my father. I'll recommend we sign it and let this deal bring our families and regions closer together. Wireless said as he picked up his tankard and watched Tyrion do the same. To the north and the west, Tyrion said as he cracked his tankard against Wireless's. Jorah. Jorah walked over to his horse. Its caparison was his house colors and sigil, the black bear covering both sides of the horse. He looked down to the smoke-gray ribbon tied to his hand and smiled, the thoughts of crowning the woman who gave it to him clear in his mind. She had surprised him by accepting his offer of a dance, and even more so by giving him her favor. My lady, would you honor me by giving me your favor? I would, my lord. You would crown me then. My lady, I can think of no one else more deserving of the title than you, not even the queen. You would be the only queen I'd ever serve, my lady. His squire helped him mount the horse and make his way to the arena. He would be jousting first, facing Lord Jason Mallister in the first round, a formidable opponent, and one more experienced than he was. But Lord Jason didn't carry a favor from a beauty like Lynessie, and would fall today. Of that, Jorah was sure. As he finally made it to the tiltyard, he looked to the stands and saw her smiling at him. He picked up the lance and moved to the end of the run, looking down to see Lord Jason at the other end. Your graces, my lords and ladies, welcome to round one of the joust. Our first two competitors representing the Riverlands, Lord Jason Mallister, and representing the North, Sir Jorah Mormont. The crowd cheered as they were introduced. Jorah raised his lance and faced down the tiltyard. At the herald's order, the horses began to charge. His lance hit dead center in Mallister's shield, forcing the other man to stumble but not fall. He barely even felt the hit from Mallister. He made his way back and his squire handed him another lance, kicking his horse into gear. He charged yet again. This time the lance hit true, and he watched as Lord Mallister was unseated. Victory to Sir Jorah! The herald announced to cheers. As Jorah sought her out in the crowd, he saw her smiling at him, and his heart lifted. Jaime. Jaime sat watching as the jousts continued. He was itching to be out there, but his uncle was right as host. There was no way he could compete. Still, it rankled him to see those competing when he knew he was better than most, if not all of them. He watched as Jon Royce beat the Blackfish and as Thoros fell to Lyle Crakehall. But he felt himself stir as he watched the mountain make his way to the tiltyard. Gregor Clegane was a man Jaime would like to kill with his bare hands. What he'd done, what his father had sent him to do, sickened him, and the thought of him walking around as a knight after his axe shamed Jaime. He wanted to kill him but stayed his hand. The mountain was not his to kill. He turned from the joust where Barristan was lining up to look at Jon, whose glaring at the mountain mirrored his own. No. Barristan. Barristan felt the muscles of his horse stir beneath him as he kicked it into gear. The firm ride focused him on the beast in front of him. He could raise his lance and no one would know, he thought as he neared the middle of the alley. No, I'd know. He lined his lance and struck good and true, but the mountain did not fall. He rode back quickly and took another lance. Lining himself up, yet again he charged, as before. The lance hit true, and as before he barely moved the mountain. Luckily, the man's own lance work was average at best, and Barristan barely felt the lance scrape off his shield. They lined up for a third time. The breathing of their horses could almost be heard by the crowd, Barristan's horse faring much better than his opponent's, his weight a much easier burden than the colossal mountains. He shifted in his saddle slightly to the left as he lined his lance, hitting Clegane square in the chest. He smiled as the mountain crashed to the ground. He didn't even bother to see if the man regained his footing, and just began to ride away when he heard a groan. Turning back, he saw the mountain tear his helm off and look at him. Did the man wish to carry this on with his sword? Apparently not, as he watched the mountain grimace and turned to walk away. Jon cheered louder than almost anyone in the crowd when he saw the mountain unhorsed by the bold himself, two knights, one the epitome of chivalry and the other the blackest of them all, and it brought Jon an immense amount of satisfaction to see Barristan victorious. It'd be for the best if we set guards on Clegane later, Tyrion said as Jon turned to him. Why? He asked. Clegane is a bad loser, Jon. Who knows what he'll get up to if he's not under escort, Geryon said while Tyrion nodded along. Surely he wouldn't do anything here. This is his liege's land. The mountains, a rabid dog. One day he'll bite even us, Tyrion whispered as he took a drink. Then why keep him around? Clegane had his uses for my father, deplorable though they were. But Jaime's in charge now. Tyrion, why keep a monster like him now? Jon, it's complicated. What Clegane did he did on my father's orders, so he didn't break any laws. He broke the laws of the gods, the laws of decency, Jon angrily said. Aye, but he committed no crime in the eyes of the king. Believe me, there's nothing I'd like more than to see him suffer for what he did. But as of right now, there's nothing that can be done, Tyrion said, hoping to calm him down. Jon just nodded along. If in the eyes of the king the mountain was innocent, then that didn't speak well of the king himself. He looked up to where the king was spilling more of a tankard over himself than he was drinking. No? Jon thought this was not how a king should be. Jorah was furious. He'd beaten Hostine and Rymond Frey, and only a few moments ago dispatched Boros Blunt, and while Lynessi had cheered him on for all of them, now, as he got ready to face Lyle Craighall, the man's brother Tybalt was speaking to her and making her laugh. He grabbed the lance from his squire and almost had his horse in motion before the signal was given. He charged down the field, his rage focused on the strongbow. The larger, stronger man should have proved a formidable challenge, but against an angry bear he was no match. The lance hit with such force that Lyle's own lance shot from his hand as he fell. The crowd gasped at the sound as he crashed to the ground. Victory to Ser Jorah! He heard the crowd cheer as Craighall staggered to his feet. Jorah nodded at the man, his rage dissipating as he turned his horse to leave. He looked at the stands and saw her looking at him, the look in her eyes one of lust, and he smiled. She motioned to his hand where her favor rested, and he knew it then. She was his. Olenna! Olenna sat beside her granddaughter, watching the joust excitedly. She had never been one who enjoyed the marital pursuits, but the news her son had given her the previous evening had filled her with glee. Mother, we need to speak. What have you done now, miss? Nothing. Mother, I spoke with Lord Arryn. I saw that. What does the old falcon want? He asked for a learned mother for the crown. It seems they're in need of help to cover costs. I'm not surprised given how this king spends, so how much does he want? 300.00 gold dragons, mother. Olenna had nearly choked on her wine. 300.00 gold dragons. Why the hell would they need that much? Surely the Lannisters would be willing to bail the crown out unless... Of course, the young lion wasn't being as cooperative as the old one. This was a huge opportunity. With the Lannisters out of the equation, they could take advantage. And what did you tell them, Mace? That we'd be delighted to help, of course, for certain considerations. It was a rare occasion that Olenna felt pride in her son. Last night had been one of the few times. She looked at him sitting beside Lord Arryn and felt it again. Are you enjoying the day, Grandmamma? Very much so, my dear. Have you spoken to the prince yet? I have, but he's so young, Grandmother. He's uninterested in everything, Marjorie said with a frown. Of course, my dear, but it's important you engage him, even if he's too young to interest you. I know. I'll do better. I know you will, my dear. We have plenty of time. The joust day, too. Facing him was Jon Royce, and the man was like rock. He'd already broken 4 lances off the man, and nothing, not a budge. He lined up for the 5th tilt and raised his lance. The favor on his wrist waved in the air as he began to charge. The lance caught the man square and true, and while Jorah felt the hit, Jon had landed on him. He was sure his had done more damage, not enough to unseat the man. But it had hurt him, that was clear. He rode back and retrieved his 6th lance and lined up again. The two men faced each other down the length of the field, their horses straining to be set free. At the signal they rode, and the lances hit their marks. Jorah felt his shield fall from his hand. The force it had been hit, almost tearing his arm from his shoulder. He looked to the rider, less hoarse, and realized he'd won. Jon was unhorsed and staggering to his feet. The cheers of the crowd were drowned out, though, as he looked to see the beaming smile on Lynesse's face. Cersei. Cersei was bored, incredibly bored, but worse than that, she was incredibly annoyed. Earlier in the day, she and Joff had bumped into the two bastards while breaking their fast. What had annoyed her so much was the fact that they were breaking theirs in the same place. The thought of it, bastards eating with royalty and in her very own home. What was her brother thinking? Not that her brother had been thinking clearly anyway. She had ordered the serving girl to have them removed, and the girl had looked at her like she had two heads. She'd have the girl whipped if she worked in the Red Keep. But here at Casterly Rock, it was her brother who was in charge, and that made her furious. So when the girl didn't remove the bastards, she sent Trant over to do so. Out now, bastard, and take the other little bastard with you. No, you're not Asta. What did you say to me, you little... I wouldn't finish that if I was you, sir. John angrily said as he stood up. And why is that bastard? Because this young lady happens to Lord Gerion's daughter, Joy. Joy, the girl said emphatically. His bastard daughter. Now are you going to move, or do you want me to drag you out? You do, and it'll be the last thing you do, I promise you, John said, moving to the man. What the hell are you doing, Trant? Jamie's voice boomed as he entered the hall. Getting these two bastards out of the Queen and Prince's company, Trant arrogantly replied. You will leave this hall now, and are no longer welcome in my keep. Is that understood, Sir Merrin? Jamie squared up to the now quivering man. Who do you think you are, Kingslayer? I am the Lord of Casterly Rock, the Warden of the West, and you will be removed from my presence either by your own feet or I'll have you carried out, Jamie said as his and John's guards entered the room. What's going on here? Sir Barristan said from the door. I want this man out of here now, Sir Barristan. Either you do it or I will, but it will be done. What the hell did you do, Sir Merrin? Barristan shouted at the man. I was following the Queen's orders. She wanted the bastards He never got to finish, the punch from Jamie knocking him to the floor. He jumped up and went for his sword, but immediately 5 swords were drawn and pointed at him. Remove yourself, Sir Merrin. Find somewhere else to stay. I'll take this up with His Grace and Lord Arryn later, Barristan said as Trant was escorted from the room. Her husband had admonished her, the Queen. How dare he force her to eat with scum and then blame her for trying to right that wrong? The man was an oaf, a fool, and that bastard, who did he think he was? The nerve of him refusing his Queen. Was that what Jamie was teaching him? Well, she wouldn't stand for it. Bad enough Jamie felt he could do it, but a lowly bastard. No, he'd need to learn his place. Jorah Barristan. Barristan dismounted to help the man up. Sandor Clegane had proved him wrong both in the melee and the joust. 4 lances he'd hit the man with all, flush in the chest, and in the end, he felt the man had slipped more than been thrown from his horse. The fall had done damage, though, his shoulder clearly hurting, and the man had accepted his hand to help him stand. The two nodded at each other, and Barristan went to ready himself for the final. Your Graces, my lords and ladies, good men and women of the West, I now present to you the finalists of the joust, representing the crown, Sir Barristan the Bold, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. The cheers of the crowd were deafening. His opponent, representing the North, Sir Jorah Mormont, the Bear Knight. Jorah's cheers equally as loud. The 2 men sat on their horses beside each other. They nodded and made their way to their respective ends. Once they had received their lances, they turned and awaited the signal, this time coming from the king himself. Good knights, I wish you both good fortune. Begin, the king said before belching loudly and turning to his squire to fill his cup. The horses rode fast and with purpose. The lances held firm as they crashed together, both hitting off the shields. They turned and began once again with the same result, over and over. 4th tilt a hit from Sir Barristan, the 5th tilt a hit from Jorah, the 6th Jorah again. They lined up for the 7th time, both men clearly exhausted, and yet they rode towards each other once more. Jorah could feel the pain. His shoulder throbbed, his chest heaved, and yet he raised his lance and struck clean, catching the bolt across the chest. But the older man did not falter. He did not move at all. He simply turned and readied himself to ride once more, and Jorah almost collapsed. Was it a show? Was he not hurt? Did it matter? No, he thought, and he steadied himself to ride once more. Barristan had been in epic jousts before, none more epic than the one at Harrenhal. He had broken 6 lances before his prince had unhorsed him, and every time he thought of it, he wondered how different things would have been if he'd have been victorious. Would Ashara been happy being crowned by him? Would his prince now be king? He cleared his mind of the thoughts as his horse charged down the field. The lance feeling lighter in his hands than he thought possible, he struck and watched as Sir Jorah slipped but did not fall. He nodded to the man and lined up once more. As he rode past the pavilion, he looked to see the king, drunk as usual, to see the queen looking at everyone with disgust and her son looking like her mirror image. He turned to see Sir Jamie and his young squire watching him intently. The young man gave him a smile, and Sir Barristan almost fell from his horse. He looked at the boy again and saw the light reflect of his eyes. The dark grey, almost looking indigo, made him catch his breath. He rode and picked up his lance and shook his head, trying to clear it for the tilt to come. Jorah had almost fallen, everything he worked for almost coming to an end. He looked down to the ribbon on his wrist and steeled his resolve. This time, he thought as he began to ride down the alley, his eyes focused on the man who stood between him and his prize. He gave it his all. Every ounce of energy he had went into the stroke, and he was rewarded as Sir Barristan fell. "Your graces, my lord and ladies, the winner of the joust, Sir Jorah Mormont." He ignored the cheering crowd and barely acknowledged the handshake he shared with Sir Barristan as he made his way to where the garland was laid out, as it was placed on the end of his lance. He rode to where she sat and held out the lance, allowing the garland to fall into her lap. "Lady Lioness, I name you the Queen of Love and Beauty," he said, and as the crowd erupted, his heart soared as she smiled and put the crown on her head.